Has anybody out there ever been in a room or sitting at a table that maybe they questioned if they belonged there? Have you ever felt underqualified despite the long laundry list of accomplishments on your resume? Maybe even though you have many times accomplished something big, something you never thought possibly you immediately thought and felt it wasn't good enough and moved the goalpost. If this is you and you in your mind are raising your hand, I want you to know you are not alone, you are not broken, and you are in the right place. Welcome to She's on Business, the podcast where we stand 10 toes down in who we are while having real conversations about life, love, leadership, and everything in between. I'm your host, Alex Lifschultz, leadership strategist, confidence coach, corporate baddie turned entrepreneur, your bestie in business, and probably the biggest hype woman you didn't know you needed. By day, I help high performing leaders strengthen confidence, communication, emotional intelligence, and executive presence. And by night, I'm a millennial mom navigating purpose, healing, ambition, identity, and figuring it all out in real time, just like the rest of y'all. Around here, we're building businesses, breaking generational cycles, healing out loud, and learning how to take up space without apologizing for it. We're also redefining what success looks like on our own terms. So, whether you're listening from the boardroom, the gym, your car after a long day at work, or somewhere just trying to hold it all together, welcome back and welcome home. Now, respectfully, let's get into it. Today is a special day. It is our very first episode of She's on Business, and it happens to also be my birthday if you're listening to this. So I thought it only right to bring forward a conversation around a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is the topic of imposter syndrome and the topic of silencing that inner critic, or what I like to call that mean girl voice in the back of our heads. For those of us that don't know what imposter syndrome is, by definition, the persistent internalized belief that you are a fraud and you do not deserve your success despite overwhelming evidence of your competence. You may attribute your achievements to luck or timing. That is imposter syndrome. You can't just accept that you are that girl. There's always a narrative playing in the back of your mind about how you don't belong where you are, how you don't deserve your success, and how you have to work harder to get further. And that's simply not true. But here's the thing. Most people think that imposter syndrome is a confidence problem. You hear me talk a lot about emotional intelligence, and there's a reason for that. In this case, I do believe that imposter syndrome is an emotional intelligence issue. It's an identity issue. It's what happens when you are constantly in a state of seeking external validation versus being grounded internally and what makes you you and how you got the success that you got. So, again, we're talking about this today, but I want to talk a little bit before we get into what imposter syndrome is and how we can fight back against her. I want to talk about, in large part, why I'm even here talking to you today about this specific issue. And so, for me personally, I know you may have heard on our bonus teaser episode. For those that don't know me, again, Alex Lifschultz, former tech exec and corporate baddie turned entrepreneur, and your host here on She's on Business. But I spent more than a decade climbing the corporate ladder. I went from being a frontline sales associate to an executive leader. And I oftentimes found myself navigating, unexpected levels of fast success, right? And that's something that, you start to really question if you deserve the opportunities you're being given. I'll also say a part of why I'm even here today is that I also found myself navigating an unexpected transition at the back half of last year. And I think in that moment, imposter syndrome almost tried to creep in, right? And what could have felt like a rejection, I had to find a way to dig deep and turn it into a redirection. And so in that time, instead of, sitting and asking, why is this happening to me? My question was, what is this trying to teach me? What is this pushing me towards? And what is the purpose and calling on my life that maybe I would have missed had this door not been open for me? And I started to reflect back on my time again in corporate and climbing the ladder. And I recall, there were many times that I saw brilliant professionals shrinking themselves in environments that rewarded performance, but maybe didn't always nurture identity or confidence or psychological safety. And I just felt like it's important to share my experiences because a lot of those same challenges that those individuals faced are things that I faced also. One of the biggest ones, again, being that feeling of I don't deserve the success that I had, or sitting at a table and looking around and questioning if I deserve to be there, or getting to a level or achieving an accomplishment that I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I could have achieved, and immediately thinking it wasn't good enough and that I needed to do more. And that again, that is imposter syndrome. So I want to remind us that imposter syndrome is that persistent internal belief that we don't deserve the success we've been given. And despite all we've done, we're a fraud in the seat that we're sitting in. Even though, again, there is an overwhelming amount of evidence and, we aren't given opportunities by accident or because people like us. We're given those opportunities because we worked for them and we deserve them. So I think it's really important as we talk about imposter syndrome to really understand that it's not a confidence issue. It's an emotional intelligence issue because it's a self-awareness issue. It's what happens when we are not innately grounded in who we are, which causes us to seek external validation. And when we seek external validation, that inner critic, or for my ladies listening, that mean girl voice, sounds like self-doubt. It tells us we're not ready, even though we're more than capable and more than prepared. It sounds like maybe we're telling ourselves we're behind, we need to work harder, nothing's ever good enough. It sounds like constantly comparing ourselves to others. And comparison is the thief of joy. But it sounds like that person is better and I need to step my game up and I need to do more. Or maybe it looks like shrinking in spaces that we're in, silencing our voice and not speaking up. So again, I think, when we talk about that inner critic, it's us mistaking our internal thoughts for facts, right? It's us creating objectivity behind things that are subjective. So I think that's where that emotional intelligence comes in and is very important because it creates awareness of those false narratives and it gives us the opportunity to internalize and tell ourselves just because we think it doesn't mean that it's true, okay? And I also want to talk about how, just a little bit, the inner critic, sometimes we think it's our intuition and it's not. The inner critic, it sounds like limiting beliefs, again, comparison, telling ourselves old, dated stories, maybe even in some capacity, it's a fear factor. And it's criticism that maybe we've heard before and over the years that we have just internalized. And I think there's a couple of differences between your intuition and your inner critic, mean girl. Your inner critic shrinks you in spaces. It makes you show up smaller. Whereas intuition is kind of your compass, it's your navigation, it's your GPS, it guides you. The inner critic creates debilitating fear where maybe there's a fear of failure, maybe there's a fear of embarrassment, maybe there's a fear of I'm not good enough. But what intuition does is it creates clarity and it creates a path forward, right? Your intuition protects you while your inner critic truly limits you. And I think, again, it's important to know that before we think about how do you fight back. And before we get into how you actually fight back against that inner critic and that mean girl, I think it's also important to understand there are some very real reasons why so many high performing women and high performing professionals struggle with imposter syndrome despite all of their success. I think first, we've got to ground ourselves in the fact that It is very difficult to silence that inner critic because a lot of times it has had the opportunity to live and breathe for a very long time. It has been creating those false narratives. It has been telling us we're not good enough, and it has us seeking external validation, right? And I think we probably fall, and I'm guilty as well, into this camp of if I just achieve the next thing, if I continue to move the goalpost, if I continue to work towards this next accomplishment, it'll go away. And that's not the case because achievement doesn't automatically heal insecurity. And for those of us that are accustomed to a certain level of excellence, we typically use performance to overcompensate for that self doubt rather than actually taking the time to resolve and heal from it. I think, again, I said earlier, comparison is another reason why we struggle from the inner critic because we'll look at somebody else's journey and we'll compare ourselves, but somebody else may be on their chapter 12 while we're on our chapter 2. And how is that fair to you to compare yourself to somebody who has more experience, more learning, and simply has had more time? I definitely think, imposter syndrome is less about your capability, and I need you to remember that. It is not about your capability. It is about, again, going back to that self awareness piece, your identity, and your self perception. Anybody who has worked with me or for me for any number or period of time has heard me say that validation is for parking and not for people. And that is because when you are seeking external validation, you will never feel like you're good enough. You've got to know within your heart of hearts and in your core that you are one of one, right? I talk a lot about your DNA, your leadership DNA, your friendship DNA, you're who you are. Like, there's literally nobody else that can be you, that can bring the skills and the strengths that you bring to the table, that can show up as you. And the sooner that you are confident enough to own that and walk in it, the sooner we can shut that noise up in the back of our heads, right? So, I want to end with, obviously, we talked a lot about what it is. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you how you can fight that inner critic and really overcome that mean girl or guy voice in your head. So I've got 6 steps I want you to, if you are listening and you're driving, you may have to come back to it. But if you're stationary, I want you to put these in your notes so you can refer back to them the next time you have those you're tempted to have those thoughts, those self-doubting thoughts, those limiting belief doubts, all of those things. Come back to this. The first step is you really have to uncover what those false narratives are that you are telling yourself. You have to name them so that you can reclaim your power for them, right? I think, again, a lot of us are operating from internal narratives that have been for a long time shaped by fear, rejection, comparison, or even past experiences. We really have to understand what those narratives are so that we can take our power back. So, step 1 is name it so you can reclaim it. Step number 2, which actually might be one of my favorites because I think we keep receipts in every area of our lives. You go shopping, you keep receipts, right? You got some messiness going on. We know. We know, right? You keep those receipts in your text thread. Receipts are what you can refer back to really uncover what the objective data in the story is versus the subjective perception someone will throw at you. So number 2 is keep a receipts resume. Everything that you've done, everything that you've accomplished, what your actual strengths are. Every time someone gives you a compliment and tells you, I really appreciate this from you, or I really appreciate that. You show up well in this area. If you've got any performance data to look at, if there's a moment in time that you have ever felt like you've shown up as your best self, leverage that in your resume of receipts, your receipt resume, right? Because again, data is a tool. I am not a data and analytics person, but I have come to know and love the fact that when you can refer back to things that are objective, it helps you really fight the subjective narratives that you're creating for yourself. So, step number 2, keep that resume of receipts. Number 3, I want you to start to face it until you make it. Not fake it till you make it, because you can fake it, but guess what? You're going to eventually come back to whatever that is that you're fighting. I need you to face it head on. Confidence is built through action, not avoidance. And so every time that you have the courage to honor your voice and who you are, or set a boundary, or speak up, take action despite being afraid, you strengthen your trust in yourself and you add to that resume of receipts, right? So face it till you make it. The fourth one, and this is really a big one because I think a lot of times and it's human nature, right? We are so warm and inviting and complimentary and gracious to everyone around us. And we forget to give ourselves the same level of encouragement and grace that we give to others. So I need you to start to talk to yourself the same way you would talk to somebody you love. I'm pausing here because I want you to hear me when I say that. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to somebody that you love. It is okay to affirm yourself. If you've got to do positive affirmations, absolutely do that. There is power in the words that you speak over your life. The power of manifestation, right? The power of shifting your perception, the power of positive self-talk. And I think that the more you are in the habit and the practice of talking kindly to yourself, the more you will be in the habit and the practice of looking for the positive in what you have done versus the negative and those limiting beliefs. And to add to that, right? Number 5 is surround yourself with people who believe in you more than you believe in yourself, right? People that lift your energy. We call it the circle of excellence around here because there's times where, let's be honest, right? Let's call it spade a spade. You just don't got it to give to yourself because you've probably given it to everybody else. You need those people around you that are going to affirm you, reassure you, and really see the best in you when sometimes you can't see it in yourselves. And I know that may be a little bit contradictory to, that emotional intelligence from a self-awareness perspective. And we're talking about not seeking external validation. But there is a very big difference between seeking external validation from people, places, and things that do not have your best interest and seeking affirmation from the people that love you. And that's what I'm telling you to do. So find that circle of excellence, surround yourself with them. And then last but not least on this list of fighting that mean girl narrative, that inner critic, find a way to take back your power by reframing narratives before they have the opportunity to take your power away from you. Reframe the negative narrative, right? I think maybe an example, instead of asking yourself, what if I fail at this? What if I'm not good enough? What if this doesn't work? Start to ask yourself, what if this teaches me something new? What if I learn something different? What if I accomplish something I never thought possible, right? Whenever you feel uncomfortable, reframe it from what if negativity happens to what if this discomfort is growing me into the person that I am called to be. So run it through that list one more time. Name it so you can claim it. Keep your resume of receipts. Face it until you make it. Make sure you speak kindly to yourself the same way you speak to others. Surround yourself with people that love you enough to affirm you when you don't have it to give to yourself. And make sure that you are mindful of the words that you're speaking so that you can reframe the negative narrative before it has time to take power and take hold. So listen, I know we've spent a little bit of time together today, and I'm so grateful that you guys have taken the time to tune in with me. That is a wrap on today's episode of She's on Business. If this conversation reminded you of your power, challenged your perspective, or gave you the push you needed to keep going, don't just listen to it. Don't just let it stop here. Share it with someone else who needs that reminder too, because we don't gatekeep growth, healing, confidence, or success over here, okay? And be sure to subscribe, leave a review, stay connected with me on socials, because the conversation is not going to just stop here. When the episode ends, we're going to keep it going. And remember, you do not have to shrink, shapeshift, or abandon yourself to succeed. You can lead, love, heal, grow, build, and take up space exactly as you are. Until next time, I need y'all to stand tall, 10 toes down, stay unshaken, and handle y'all's business. All right, y'all.